Hi, friends. Welcome to episode 44 of Peace is Here. This episode centers on a profound and beautifully written book, The Birth of the Khalsa, by Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh. I'll be reading the introduction of the book, and I'll also share why this book matters to me personally, how it helps us imagine a more peaceful world, and how you can learn more about the brilliant author behind it. Why am I interested in this book? If you've been listening for a while, you may remember episode 33, 10 Badass Sikh Women. I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes. In that episode, I shared how during a particularly challenging year caring for my mother, I took a 12-month compassionate Kundalini yoga class. I was already curious about women in yoga history, and the instructor shared an interview with Govinder Singh, a young Sikh teacher. He spoke about Mata Jitoji, wife of Guru Gobind Singh, and how she requested a spiritual practice to attain omniscience. The titles she was given in Sikh texts were, in Govinder's words, ridiculous, though he quickly clarified that he meant shockingly magnificent, not dismissive. Still, I couldn't help but wonder, how might Mata Jitoji herself have responded to the word ridiculous? I believe The Birth of the Khalsa addresses this kind of male framing and lovingly reframes it. Why is this book needed to help us move toward peace? Peace requires more than ceasefires and treaties. It requires a transformation of how we see power, how we speak of the sacred, and who we believe embodies wisdom. Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh's book reclaims the spiritual and symbolic power of the feminine in Sikh tradition. It unearths the maternal, nurturing, and liberating roots of the Khalsa, roots that, if better understood, could help dismantle patriarchal systems far beyond religion. When we reimagine the divine as loving, inclusive, and embodied in all genders, we move closer to a peace that is not enforced, but grown. Who is Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh? Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh is a leading scholar of Sikhism and professor of religion at Colby College in Maine. Her work has been instrumental in exploring the intersection of gender, spirituality, and poetic imagination within Sikh traditions. She's especially known for her influential translations of Sikh scripture, including The Name of My Beloved, verses of the Sikh gurus, and for articulating a deeply feminist, inclusive, and peace-centered vision of Sikh identity. In The Birth of the Khalsa, Singh reinterprets the founding of the Khalsa through a feminist lens, illuminating the maternal, nurturing, and transformational aspects of Sikh theology that are often overlooked. Her writing invites us to ask, what happens when we remember the divine not as dominator, but as mother? Her writing isn't just academic, it's restorative. A glimpse into the text. Here's a passage that stopped me in my tracks. When fathers stop acting out their male roles and become like mothers, they are liberated from their prison of gender. In turn, they do not exert power over us, but rather they empower us with their tears, love, and nurture. For too long, we've remembered Guru Gobind Singh in some tough guise and missed out on the maternal love and empowerment that are the matrix of the Khalsa institution. Sikhs will recover their true pride and authenticity not in tough and macho acts and words, but in the rejected and repressed female side of the body and the words of the Guru. She closes this section with an image drawn from Rabindranath Tagore, writing that male and female, death and birth, creativity and procreativity are not contradictions. They are the right and left breasts of the mother. Does that sound like peace to you? It does to me. How to learn more about Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh? If you want to dive deeper into Nikki's work, here are some great places to start, and links to these are in the show notes. Her book, The Birth of the Khalsa, A Feminist Rememory of Sikh Identity. Her translation, The Name of My Beloved, Verses of the Sikh Gurus. The Sikh Archive podcast, The Feminine Sikh Principle with Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh, and an academic panel on YouTube, Sikh Feminism, What Do We Know, with Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh. She also speaks about poetic imagination, gender equality, and interfaith peace work with such clarity, it's no surprise her words resonate across spiritual traditions. Why I'm reading the introduction. I originally intended to read chapter 1, but decided to read the introduction instead, both because of the beautiful language and because I'm still working on correct pronunciation of sacred names and words. That said, I encourage you to read more. The chapters are titled Pregnant Text and the Conception of the Khalsa, The Guru in Labor and Birth of the Khalsa, Mythic Inheritance and the Historic Drink of the Khalsa, Semiotic Poetry of the Khalsa. This book is a true gift. So now I submit humbly and with deep gratitude The Birth of the Khalsa by Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh, Introduction. For there is no identity without memory, be it of a person, couple, family, neighborhood, community, tribe, people, nation, globe. Catherine Simpson, The Future of Memory. The Birth of the Khalsa, from the Arabic khalis, meaning pure, by Guru Gobind Singh, is a pivotal event in the psyche and imagination of the Sikhs. During the Baisakhi festivities of 1699, the Guru and his wife prepared Amrit, and 5 men from different castes sipped it from the same bowl. Their drink purified them of all mental defilements, ending centuries of hereditary oppressions of caste, class, and profession. The 5 were born into the egalitarian family of the Khalsa. Over time, Khalsa and Sikh have become synonymous terms, and even though only a minority of Sikhs are formally initiated into the Khalsa order, all Sikh men and women trace their personality, name, religious rites, and prayers, what they do, what they wear, how they identify themselves, to this liberating Baisakhi of 1699. But the event has been recorded only by men, with the result that its total value is far from recovered, and in fact, the imbalanced memory has imposed a heavy burden on the life of half of the Sikh community. How can its mnemonic effects forge Sikh men into hyper-masculine subjects and Sikh women into passive and silent objects of centuries-old cultural burdens? Something is terribly out of joint. This study is my rememory of that moment from a female perspective, which recognizes and reproduces an alternative vision to the conventional and androcentric understanding and application. To be sure, Guru Gobind Singh was a man of his times. Living in a patriarchal society, he might not even have been aware of all the liberating implications of his dramatic Baisakhi event. But he set them in motion, and his followers must keep this momentum going. I hope my rememory will inspire Sikhs to live out the emancipatory praxis birthed by their Guru and open our global society to becoming more receptive of others. I formally began this project in the living room of our home at the Punjabi University in Patiala, India, in the summer of 1998. In the 90s, I traveled from America to India to visit my ailing father as often as I could. I had lost my mother. Dad was the only link with my past, my culture, and my heritage, and I clung to him tightly. Through a paralytic stroke, he had lost the use of his right hand, and he deeply felt the loss of my mother. In his sad, sad state, he was delighted to see me and showered upon me the love, warmth, and care that my mother had always shown. During the last years of his life, he was both a father and a mother to me. Actually, even as a child, I remember him being very sensitive and full of love. I'd often see Dad with tears in his eyes, which is very unusual in the patriarchal culture of the Punjab. On weekends, especially in the spring and autumn months, there would be quite a few weddings in our neighborhood. When the time came for the daughter to leave her parents' home, the air would be sonorous with doleful songs. Whatever corner of the house I'd be playing in, Dad would pick me up in his arms and cry out, "I am not going to marry off my daughter." And Granny would reprimand him. "Not marry off your daughter? What inauspicious words." In May 1998, I was going to be back with Dad and start my research on Guru Gobind Singh's institution of the Khalsa. The 300th anniversary of the Khalsa's birth was fast approaching, and I wanted to celebrate it by exploring this historic Sikh event. On my way to India, I stopped in London for an invigorating conference at the School of Oriental and African Studies. It was a stimulating time, and I enjoyed being with friends and colleagues. On the plane, however, I felt incredibly empty and sad. As soon as I reached Patiala, I knew the reason. Friends and relatives had come to meet me in white dupattas and tears. Dad was no more. For months, I'd been looking forward to finishing my semester in Maine and sitting at his bedside in Patiala to start my project. Now he was lying on ice in a living room filled with friends and family, mourning in silence. I wanted to stay as close to him as possible for as long as I could. Major Sahib, whom Dad greatly admired and with whom I had intended to discuss Sikh historical texts, had also come to pay his last visit. With Dad's final departure from our house on the funeral bier, everything, my home, Punjab, India, would also be carried away from me. We were waiting for my brother to arrive from America for the final rites. I wanted to make the most of the last hours with my dad at home. Sleepless for hours, utterly confused, dejected, and lost, I began reading in Dad's presence Kaur Singh's account of the Khalsa event with Major Sahib. My father's life had been entirely dedicated to Sikh scholarship, and even during his very last weeks, he immersed himself completely in finishing his 4-volume Encyclopedia of Sikhism. Its first volume had been launched by the President of India during Dad's lifetime. The final was to be launched just a few months after by the Prime Minister of India, but by then my father had passed away. Dad had started his career as a lecturer in English at the Khalsa College in Amritsar, the premier Sikh institute where he had received both his undergraduate and graduate degrees. In fact, the college authorities were familiar with his academic potential and offered him his first academic position even before his exam results were out. Dad had joined the Khalsa College right after completing his secondary education at the Khalsa School in Muxtar. Granny would tell us about how much grandfather wanted Dad to become a doctor and even had him admitted to the medical school in Julandur, but Dad was so miserable for those first few days that grandfather finally had to give in to his wish to attend Khalsa College. Dad thrived in the creative ferment that permeated the Sikh Center in the 40s. He was involved in many of its interlinking and vibrant circles and served as president of the Khalsa College Student Association, editor of the Darbar, and president of the Khalsa College Hockey Club. Later in life, he became involved in university administration, with Maharaja Jadvidra Singh of Patiala as the president. He served as the member secretary of the commission that was instrumental in the establishment of the Punjabi University in Patiala, the remote area on the outskirts of the city of Patiala, where he and Bhai Jo Singh, his revered teacher at the Khalsa College and the first vice chancellor of the new university, would go for their evening walks, was chosen as the site for the Punjabi University, and it soon became the leading intellectual campus of the Punjab. Though extremely busy with the administrative demands of the growing university, Dad would stay up late at night to keep up with his scholarship, and he wrote many books, including The Heritage of the Sikhs, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and Guru Gobind Singh, which was translated into 14 Indian languages. At the invitation of the United States government, in 1964, he visited universities and research institutes across the country. He was greatly impressed by the American system of education and published Higher Education in America. He spent a most stimulating 1968 to 69 academic year at the Center for World Religions at Harvard, where he wrote Guru Nanak and the Origins of the Sikh Faith. Upon his return from Harvard, Dad became the chair of the first academic department of religious studies in India. called the Guru Gobind Singh Department of Religious Studies. It was established by the Punjabi University upon the 500th anniversary of Guru Nanak's birth, 1969. During his tenure, Dad started the publication of the Journal of Religious Studies and kept up with his prolific scholarship in Sikh history and literature by writing books, contributing articles to leading journals and newspapers, translating Punjabi authors like Bhaivir Singh, Amrita Pritnam, and Ajit into English, and editing collections of short stories, essays, and conference papers. He hosted many international conferences and brought distinguished scholars to the Punjabi University to foster understanding and peace among people of different religions and nationalities. He also traveled extensively, lecturing on different facets of Sikhism in Japan, Belgium, Holland, England, and the United States. The series of lectures that he delivered at Berkeley at the invitation of the University of California were published in a book under the title The Berkeley Lectures on Sikhism. He was an active member of the World Conference on Religion and Peace, and he also joined the international consultation in search of nonviolent alternatives in Derry, Northern Ireland. Through his scholarship, travels, and warmth of personality, he developed many lifelong friendships. So even when Dad was on his own in his paralytic condition, there was a constant stream of scholars and visitors from far and near who helped him keep his spirits high. There were also celebrations when cabinet ministers, important political leaders, and other dignitaries came to the house to present him with awards, including an honorary doctorate from Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar. Mejrahi and Panditji, his two constant attendants, cheerfully greeted all the guests. Professor Harminder Singh Kohli, Sardar Tara Singh Virji, and Dr. Harjit Singh took care of him as if he were their own father. I will always cherish the love and affection that our community and Sikh scholars have given my father. The whole community bade him a deeply touching farewell, for which again I will always be indebted. Father was given an official state funeral complete with a military gun salute. Sikh leaders, who sometimes had been vehement political opponents of one another, sat together at his funeral, listening to the melodious verses from the Guru Granth, the Sikh Bible. This was indeed a wonderful tribute to a life dedicated to welcoming people from different political, social, religious, and intellectual perspectives, and promoting in his own unique way the unifying impulse of his Sikh faith. Present were the president of the Shramani Gurdwara Prabandhak, member and Parliament Jagmeet Singh Brar, Captain Simran Singh Man, and Sardar Tarlakan Singh, chairman of the National Commission of Minorities. And sharing my grief for many hours were Bibji Mrs. Torah, wife of the president of the SGPC, Biba Puneet Kaur, Maharani of Patiala, and Biba Bunti, Maharani of Burdwan. The Punjabi University honored posthumously by prefixing his name, Professor Harbans Singh, to the Department of the Encyclopedia of Sikhism, to which he had totally dedicated himself during the last decades of his life, and he was invested with the Order of the Khalsa during the Khalsa tercentenary celebrations in 1999. Beginning my work on the birth of the Khalsa in that tragic hour of his death was my way of saying goodbye to my beloved dad, and this book is really a tribute to him. A few days after the cremation, my brother and I visited Anandpur Sahib. We had gone to nearby Kharagpur Sahib to immerse in the river Sutlej the last remnants of my father, including the tiny kirpan and kara that withstood the crematory flames. Dad's death brought us to the spot where the 10th Sikh Guru had given birth to the Khalsa almost 300 years before. It was at Gurdwara, Sikh place of worship, from Guru equals enlightener and Dwara equals door, Kesgarth, that Guru Gobind Singh enjoined his Sikhs to keep the 5 Ks, Kesha, long hair, Kanga, comb, Kara, steel bracelet, kirpan, sword, and kacha, drawers, as symbols of their physical identity. Henceforth, they were not to cut their hair, and so the shrine of Kesgarth derives its name from the word kesha, meaning uncut hair. The memory of that historic event had something magical about it at that particular place and time, because I felt pain and estrangement literally sliding away from me. Instead, a new comfort and life arose. For the first time in days, my numb body responded to the environment around me. Here I was at the beautiful white shrine, which I had visited many times before. My personal memories of coming here after the sudden death of my mother, after the birth of my daughter, with my husband, with friends, flashed and fused with communal memories. This was the place where something momentous had begun for us 300 years ago. My brother and I were standing in Anandpur, the city of bliss, Anand. This was indeed our birthplace. The white marble dome and pillars of Gurdwara Keshgarth serenely embraced the clear blue skies, while the skies in turn outlined the Shivalik ranges, forming a diaphanous halo. In the midst of this panoramic scene, Guru Gobind Singh, on Baisakhi Day, 1699, birthed his Khalsa. He performed a dramatic act in front of a large congregation. He asked for the life of 5 devotees and acted as if he had killed them. He killed 5 goats instead and brought the 5 devotees back into a stunned gathering. He then recited sacred verses as he churned water in a bowl with his double-edged sword. His wife, Matajituji, added sugar puffs to the elixir. These first 5 who sipped the iron-sweet elixir formed the nucleus of the Khalsa. They discarded their caste, class, creed, and inherited occupations and entered the new family of the Khalsa. This study is a personal journey into that moment, a return to my own past. Anybody who tries to study this event soon discovers there's very little documentary evidence from that period. The accounts from Sanapat's Sri Gursoba, Kaur Singh's Gurbilas Patshahi 10, and Sukha Singh's Gurbilas Patshahi 10 that I will be using came from the 18th and early 19th centuries. They belong to the genre of Gurbilas literature, Guru plus Bilas equals splendor of the Guru, a type of narrative poetry exalting the heroism of the Gurus in their fight for justice and equality. The authors are geared more toward expressing the sentiments and convictions of their contemporaries than providing us with historically accurate details. Yet these poetic narratives by Sanapat, Kaur Singh, and Sukha Singh do provide a framework to approach the pivotal event that I learned as a child. They have enabled me to explore the event from my personal, cultural, and historical grounding so as to understand the effect it continues to have on the Sikh community. I was born in a Sikh household in the Punjab, and my first lessons in Sikh history were, of course, through my family and my community. Even then, I could see the effect of the event for people, how it has continued to shape their psyches and their actions. This study is not a search for the historical facts of that day. It does not simulate an objectivity. I do not claim to be an epical in my scope, for I do not intend to verify empirical evidence or rectify any historical details. I do not judge who is right or wrong in their documentation, nor do I wish to assess the accuracy and authority of contemporary scholars. I'm concerned with the responses, beliefs, and attitudes of the people to the basic event, which is deeply etched in Sikh minds and hearts. My fundamental question is, how might we think about it so that it can be even more effective in a positive way for Sikh men and women? As the leading Sikh historian, W.H. MacLeod, perceptively says, it matters little whether 5 volunteers were actually summoned or whether 5 goats were actually slain. The overriding fact is that, in its essential outline, the story is firmly believed and that this belief has unquestionably contributed to the subsequent shaping of conventional Sikh attitudes. Thank you, my friends. Wasn't that beautiful, the story of Nikky-Guninder Kaur Singh's father? I've decided to cut our losses here. I did record the entire introduction over 6 months ago, and as you could tell from what recording I've included, it's been challenging. But challenging things are good. I think I'm going to end there, though, so that all of us don't have to suffer. And I do hope that you will continue on in learning about Nikki's work and this beautiful movement towards peace. That concludes this episode of Peace is Here. You can learn more at aviskalfsbeek.com, where I share updates on this podcast and my books, including the newly released novella Mana Mutante, a story about food, friendship, and finding peace in the soy-soaked heart of industrial ag Iowa. Coming up next is Wolf Peace, a special podcast series inspired by the work of philosopher Robert Paul Wolff, who passed away earlier this year. In it, I explore foundational ideas in political philosophy and pair each thinker in his 1966 anthology with a visionary of peace. From Plato to bell hooks, Lenin to Leo Tolstoy, we ask, what kind of world are we building and what kind of peace do we want? This episode is human narrated by me, but was created with the help of AI, which has promised to let me know if it makes something up. So far, no confessions. But if you believe I've missed something, or if you just want to say hello, I'd love to hear from you. If you're curious about my relationship with AI at the time of recording this podcast, you can visit my website and go to Peace Intent. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep making peace, even if it's quiet. Thank you for joining me for the Peace is Here podcast. Until next time, sit with yourself in silence every day. That's self with a capital S. We are all scholars of peace. Peace and love to you all. Podcast music is Dalai Lama Riding a Bike by Javier Peque Rodriguez. A link to his music on Spotify and Bandcamp is in the show notes. If you enjoyed this podcast, it really helps me if you subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Avis Kalfsbeek, and I write the Pedro the Water Dog Saves the Planet book series, which are a series of environmental adventure novellas. Thank you again. Listen for the peace.